Hello students, welcome back. Welcome to the fourth semester of your UG course, the last semester in which you will be dealing with the common courses. So as part of A06, your English common course in this semester, we have a textbook prescribed for our study, Spectrum. Spectrum is a collection which has literary works that deal with contemporary issues that concern people living in our world. And I will be dealing with the story Comala in this collection, the well-known Malayalam story written by the young eminent writer Santhosh Eachikkanam. I'm sure the name of Eachikkanam is quite familiar to everyone who knows, at least something about Malayalam, the Malayalam literary scene today. He is very much a part of, the contemporary Malayalam literary scene. A writer through stories like Panti Bhojanam, Ubhaya Jeevitam, Granthalokam, and the well-known story Biryani, has focused on the life of the common people in Kerala, particularly the marginalized. പാർശ്വവൽക്കരിക്കപ്പെട്ടവരുടെ കഥയാണ് കൂടുതൽ. He hails from the district of Kasaragod, and he has also written about issues dealing with the environmental issues faced by the people of Kasaragod. He's also written screenplays for movies, well-known movies like Annayum Rasoolum, Midukki Gold, Njan Steve Lopez, and so on. Eachikkanam received the Sahitya Academy Award for his well-known story, Comala, in the year 2008. And that is a story that is prescribed for our study in this textbook, Comala. Comala. Now the title appears rather strange. We are not familiar with such a word. Indeed, it is not a Malayalam word. Malayalam Storika, the writer chose the name of a place where a novel, a Spanish novel written by a Mexican writer named Juan Rulfo, is set. The name of the novel is Pedro Paramo, and the writer Juan Rulfo set the major action of this novel in a strange place called Comala. It's a village or a little town in Mexico. It's a ghost town because you do not have normal people here. In this town, you have the wandering souls of the former inhabitants of the town, the souls who had not been able to reach heaven. സ്വർഗത്തിൽ എത്താൻ പറ്റാത്ത ആത്മാക്കൾ അലഞ്ഞു തിരിയുന്ന ഒരു സ്ഥലം. That is what Comala is in that novel. It's a strange world, needless to say. And just as the visitor, to this village is confused by what he sees, he's not sure about what he sees or hears or experiences in that place. He is constantly confused and surprised and thrown off his guard, thrown off balance. Adeymadiri, the reader also, when you read about this character's journey through Comala, as a reader, we are also thrown off balance. We are also not sure. എന്താണ് നമ്മൾ വായിക്കുന്നത്, ഇതിൻ്റെ അർത്ഥം എന്താണ്, what does it convey, what do we see here, what do we hear, we are not sure about that. We are also constantly thrown off balance. And that is the reason why Eachikkanam chose this name for his story, because what he presents here in this story, the Malayalam story, is an equally strange situation. Something that is bizarre, something that is unexpected. നമ്മൾ കേട്ട് പരിചയിക്കാത്ത രീതിയിലുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങൾ. That is what he wants to convey. The strangeness of that situation is what he wants to convey, and so he chooses the title Comala for that. So the age that we live in is often considered to be the age of post-truth. The post-truth era. സത്യാനന്തര യുഗത്തിലാണ് നമ്മൾ ജീവിക്കുന്നത്. It is the term post-truth is used to denote the situation of our world today, where facts are no longer as important as they were at one point of time. Facts are not as important as opinions, emotions, beliefs, and so on. ഇങ്ങനെയുള്ള വൈകാരികമായിട്ടുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങളാണ് ഇന്ന് പബ്ലിക് ഒപ്പീനിയൻ ഡിസൈഡ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്. ദാറ്റ് ഈസ് വാട്ട് ഡിസൈഡ്സ് പബ്ലിക് ഒപ്പീനിയൻ. ഫാക്ട്സ് do not have the kind of relevance that they had at one point of time. So we give too much of more importance to opinions, to fake news, the kind of fake news that is peddled on TV. Charchagal, the TV discussions that we have, they keep churning out impressions, opinions, and so on, which tend to have a kind of controlling effect on us. We fall into a kind of trap where we believe whatever these TV channels tell us. We lose the ability to question it. ഇത് സത്യമാണോ മിഥ്യയാണോ എന്ന് ചിന്തിക്കാതെ we kind of fall into a trap where we just believe whatever is being conveyed to us in a particular television channel. And we know that each channel has its own agenda. It is either owned by a political party, or it is owned by a group of individuals, or an individual who has a particular lineage, a particular ideology. And അതനുസരിച്ചിട്ടുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങളാണ് പറയുന്നത്. No two newspapers will give you the same news. Each newspaper will have its own version of the truth. Each TV channel will have its own version of any situation. So it is that kind of a situation which gives scant regard to truth that Eachikkanam presents to us in this story. Naturally, the story begins with a kind of it's a discussion on television, or a charchayana, and the point of discussion here is a suicide note written by a person named Vishwa Kundur. He is the protagonist of the story, and he has written a suicide note that he plans to commit suicide on a very significant day, on the 15th of August. അപ്പോൾ ഇദ്ദേഹം സൂയിസൈഡ് ചെയ്യാൻ പോകുകയാണ് എന്ന ഈ ഒരു കുറിപ്പിനെ കുറിച്ചാണ് ഇന്നത്തെ ചർച്ച on this particular day. So you have people from different walks of life who have been invited by the television channel to discuss this person's proposed suicide. One of the important features of this post-truth era is the commodification of life. മനുഷ്യ ജന്മം തന്നെ ഒരു വിൽപ്പന ചരക്കായി മാറുന്ന ഒരു പ്രതിഭാസം. We live in an age where everything, things that we had traditionally considered to be non-saleable, like our life, our very being, our thoughts, our ideas, even these are transformed into saleable commodities. So commodification is the transformation of people and ideas into commodities for sale. We live in a world where the capitalist economic system is so powerful, that market economy is so powerful that it transforms everything like human life, art, religion, medicine, thoughts, philosophy, ideas, services, everything. All of these are transformed into things that can be sold, things that can be traded, things that have a price tag on them. This is what is known as commodification. I'm sure you're familiar with the way in which the algorithms of the internet are so powerful that through artificial intelligence, the systems know what you think, what you desire, what your likes are, what your dislikes are, and so on. And based on that, they project ideas and images for you. അതായത് നമ്മളുടെ സ്വന്തം വികാരങ്ങളെ പോലും അടക്കി ഭരിക്കാൻ കഴിവുള്ള അൽഗോറിതംസ് ഉള്ള ഒരു ലോകത്തിലാണ് നമ്മൾ ഇന്ന് ജീവിക്കുന്നത്. And therefore our own life, that thing that we used to call our life, our individuality, അതൊക്കെ ഇന്ന് ഒരു dead soul മാതിരി ആയിരിക്കുകയാണ്. Exactly like the dead souls that roam about in the streets of the village or the little town called Comala in the Mexican novel. But how does Santhosh Eachikkanam use that idea? He is also in the story presenting to us a state or a situation where human life itself has become a commodity that can be sold, that can be marketed, that can be manipulated by the media. That is what you have in. So the story itself begins with some activity in a media channel. ഇന്ന് നമ്മൾ മീഡിയ എന്ന് പറയുന്ന സമയത്ത് നമ്മളുടെ മനസ്സിൽ കുറേ ഇമേജസ് ഉണ്ട്. You have the role played by the media in shaping your opinion. ഏതൊരു ചാനലിലും you have these discussions, ചർച്ച എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്, where things are conveyed in such a way that you are forced into believing what is projected or conveyed or sold on those in those channels. As we've already mentioned, each television channel has its own agenda, and it conveys the news, whatever happens, through its own point of view. What it wants to convey is what is conveyed. അവര് കൺവേ ചെയ്യാൻ ഉദ്ദേശിക്കുന്ന സത്യം അത് റിയാലിറ്റി ആയിട്ട് വലിയ ബന്ധമൊന്നും ഉണ്ടാവില്ല. പക്ഷേ that is what they want to convey, and we as the viewers are manipulated into believing that that is the truth. So അങ്ങനെയുള്ള ഒരു ചർച്ചയിൽ we now have this particular television channel discussing a novelty, ഒരു പ്രത്യേക സാഹചര്യം. That is what is being discussed. So let us now begin the story by visualizing this kind of a discussion. രാത്രി 9 മണിക്ക് നടക്കുന്ന ഒരു ചർച്ച പോലെയുള്ളൊരു ഡിസ്കഷനാണ്. And you know how whether it is Republic TV or Asianet or any other channel, I just mentioned two names, the way in which the anchor, the chief news person would present the idea in a very dramatic manner, and then he or she, that presenter would invite the responses of the panelists. ഓരോ ചർച്ചയിലും 3-4 പേര് ചർച്ചയ്ക്ക് വിളിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ടാവും. They are the panelists. Okay, so what is the discussion on this particular day? It is a letter or a note written by a person named Kundur Vishwan. Who is he? He's a 45-year-old man, and he has now become the center of attention because of a suicide note that he has written. According to that note, he, along with his family, would commit suicide on the 15th of August. So this is what is being discussed by the television channel. The fact that there is a grave threat that this family faces, that they have a problem. അത് എങ്ങനെ ദൂരീകരിക്കാൻ പറ്റും? How do we remove that person's problem? അതല്ല, media is more interested in sensationalizing this issue. അതൊരു വലിയൊരു ചർച്ചാ വിഷയമാക്കുക, so that its TRP would go up. അതിൻ്റെ വ്യൂവർഷിപ്പ് പോകാൻ വേണ്ടിയിട്ട്, ഉയരാൻ വേണ്ടിയിട്ട്. They just need people to listen to their news. They just want people to tune into their channel. അതിനുവേണ്ടി ഏതറ്റം വരെയും പോകും. They can, വളരെ to blow up emotions, to churn up emotions, to sensationalize something. That is exactly what they are interested in. I hope, I don't know if you've heard about an incident in the past when a particular TV channel, just to get this kind of attention, audience attention, they from the morning they started scrolling, the particular news, watch the suicide attempt of somebody in the news tonight എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് കാലത്ത് മുതൽ ഇത് സ്ക്രോൾ ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുകയാണ്. So what had happened is that there was a man who jumped into a pond, or a temple pond, in order to commit suicide. And ഇത് ഈ ടെലിവിഷന്റെ cameraman, the new journalist and the cameraman, they saw this and they filmed it. And they began writing it as a scroll notice on the channel. ഇന്ന് വൈകിട്ട് കാണൂ, ഇത് ലൈവ്, you can watch this എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ട്. Or they sensationalize that issue rather than doing anything to save this man. ഈ കുളത്തിൽ ചാടിയ ആളെ രക്ഷിക്കുക എന്നുള്ളതായിരുന്നില്ല അവരുടെ ലക്ഷ്യം. Their only interest was to sensationalize it to such an extent that more and more people would watch their television channel and witness the act of this man committing suicide. അപ്പോൾ അതിൻ്റെ ഒരു ഓർമ്മപ്പെടുത്തൽ എന്ന രീതിയിൽ, here is Eachikkanam writing the story about the proposed suicide of Kundur Vishwan. And what has he, got into trouble? Why is he committing suicide? There is the fact that the Vellore Service Cooperative Bank had, lent money to a person named Sudhagaran, son of Kunyaman, residing at Vellore East. അവർക്ക് എല്ലാ സർവേ നമ്പറൊക്കെ കൃത്യമായിട്ട് അറിയാം. And he had borrowed an amount of rupees 50,000. So why should Kundur Vishwan commit suicide for that? Only because he had stood surety. Adina, he was one who signed in that, in the documents, bankil samarpichittulla ee documents la surety aita it was Kundur Vishwan who signed. And this person, the person who had actually borrowed the money, ee loan edutha alu, that is Mr. Sudhagaran, he did not repay the amount. So now it becomes the burden of Kundur Vishwan. So whatever he has, അങ്ങോരുടെ കയ്യിലുള്ള എല്ലാ പണവും പ്രോപ്പർട്ടിയും മുഴുവൻ the bank will now take, because the person whom he had stood surety for did not repay the amount. So this is the situation. അപ്പോൾ ആദ്യത്തെ പാരഗ്രാഫ് നിങ്ങൾ വായിച്ചോളൂ. You can imagine the way in which it is dramatically presented by the news presenter. Kundur Vishwan is a 55-year-old man who attracted media attention with a board hung in front of his house saying, "Owing to severe debt, we will commit collective suicide at the stroke of midnight on 15th August." നമ്മളുടെ at the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India awakens to freedom എന്ന പണ്ഡിറ്റ് നെഹ്റുവിന്റെ ആ ഒരു സ്പീച്ച്, ട്രിസ്റ്റ് വിത്ത് ഡെസ്റ്റിനി സ്പീച്ചിനെ ഓർമ്മപ്പെടുത്തുന്ന രീതിയിൽ അത്രയും, that was a dramatic moment. That was a very, very historic moment in India's past. അങ്ങനെ ഒരു സെൻസേഷണലൈസ് ആയിട്ടാണ് ഇവിടെ ഈ ന്യൂസ് ചാനൽ ഇത് പ്രസന്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്. So this public declaration is a pointer to the economic, social and psychological inequalities that contemporary Kerala faces. ഇന്നത്തെ കേരളത്തിന് മുന്നിൽ നിൽക്കുന്ന വലിയ challenges, financial, economic, social, psychological inequalities. അസമത്വങ്ങളെ കുറിച്ചാണ് ഇന്ന് ചർച്ച ചെയ്യാൻ പോകുന്നത്. Will Vishwan and his family die or not? ഇതാണ് ഇവരുടെ ചോദ്യം. To answer this question that is disturbing our sleep, we have Sri Vishwan on the line with us. What will be the consequences if such a weird threat turns real on the 59th Independence Day of India? And who will be at fault? The Vellore Service Cooperative Bank or Sudhakaran, son of Kunyaman, residing at Vellore East, survey number 1256/83, who borrowed rupees 50,000 with Vision standing surety? To speak about the various aspects of this problem, ഈ ചർച്ചയിൽ ഇന്ന് പങ്കെടുക്കുന്നത് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് we have with us in the studio Dr. C. Nandakumar, well-known psychologist, writer and social activist. ഇപ്പോൾ ഈ പേര് പറയുന്ന സമയത്തേക്കും in the background you would have music. അങ്ങനെയാണല്ലോ അത് അവതരിപ്പിക്കുന്നത്. ഇതിലുള്ള മാനുഷികമായിട്ടുള്ള ആ പ്രശ്നം അതിനെ നിസ്സാരവൽക്കരിച്ചിട്ട് they just trivialize it, they just ignore it, they just overlook that and present it in the form of a grand drama spectacle. Sri Madhavan Nair, Secretary Vellore Cooperative Bank, and Sri Alex Punus of the National Crime Records Research Bureau. And on the telephone line, we have Sri Kundur Vishwan and Advocate Fatima Begum. News time continues after a short break. അപ്പോൾ ഒരു വിരോധാഭാസം എന്ന രീതിയിൽ now you have this advertisement. ഈ ന്യൂസിനിടയിൽ വളരെ സീരിയസ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു കാര്യം പറയുന്നതിനിടയിൽ ആ മാർക്കറ്റ് ഇക്കോണമിയെ നമ്മൾ ഓർമ്മപ്പെടുത്തുന്ന രീതിയിൽ you have the advertisement coming. And എന്താണ് advertisement? It is for building company, Mullur Towers and Residency. They promise to make your dream home a reality. Better locations, better lifestyle, creations for generations. എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ അവിടെ ഇങ്ങനെ അവർ കൊട്ടിഘോഷിക്കുകയാണ് അവരുടെ the buildings, the beautiful houses they build. And here is one person who is about to lose everything. അങ്ങോരുടെ വീടും സ്വത്തും എല്ലാം നഷ്ടപ്പെടാൻ പോവുകയാണ് ഈ Kundur Vishwan. And on the other side you have this grand towers coming up, the Mullur Towers and Residency. So it's an ironic reminder of that the real inequality that exists in the society. So after the commercial break, the news telecast continues, and you have Vision on the telephone line. And he കേൾക്കാം വിഷൻ പറഞ്ഞോളൂ എന്ന് പറയുന്ന സമയത്ത് he talks about himself. He has a small family, wife, 2 daughters, and they have ഒരു 7.5 cents land. അതിലൊരു കൊച്ചു വീട് where the work on the house is not yet completed, it has not been plastered. They just somehow ഒരു roof മാത്രം, ഒരു concrete roof ഇടാൻ കഴിഞ്ഞു. And in the previous month of October or so, they moved into that house. That is the only thing that they have. If the bank takes that away, they will be left with nothing at all, and no other way but suicide. ആത്മഹത്യ അല്ലാതെ വേറൊരു വഴിയുമില്ല if the bank takes this away. So now the news person asks, so how did you get into this debt trap? And that is when Vishwan tells the channel about his friend Sudhakaran and how they had been good friends in school. They sat on the same bench in the government high school Vellore, and avade padikkunna samayathu their teacher Poduval sir had taught them that helping others is an act of holiness. Idilum പുണ്യമായിട്ടുള്ള കർമ്മം അല്ലെങ്കിൽ പ്രവൃത്തി വേറെയില്ല, മറ്റുള്ളവരെ സഹായിക്കുക എന്നുള്ളത്. And having learned that from his teacher Poduval sir, he practiced that. And this is exactly what Sudhakaran had also told him when he was so grateful that Vishwan had stood as surety when he took the loan. So Vishwan continues saying that Sudhakaran had been so grateful for the help that Vishwan gave him. But 3 years later, when the bank notice arrived saying that he had to pay 50,000 along with interest, naturally Vishwan got in touch with Sudhakaran and told him, എനിക്ക് 2 പെൺമക്കളാണ് ഉള്ളത് Sudhakaran, will you turn us homeless? പക്ഷെ അതിന് what was the reply that Sudhakaran gave? അതുപോലും കേൾക്കാതെ, look at the very inhuman way in which the television channel just moves over to Mr. Madhavan Nair, the secretary of this bank, And, they're just not interested in listening to Vishwan's story at this point. പിന്നെ ഇനി അവർക്ക് കൂടുതൽ ഇൻട്രസ്റ്റ് ബാങ്കിന്റെ സെക്രട്ടറി പറയുന്നത്. And what does he say? He says, he has no other way. He, as the secretary of the bank, he can only act according to the Cooperative Bank Act. And according to the rules, he has to repay the capital and the interest, which has now reached some 90,345 rupees. And if he doesn't repay that, if he doesn't pay that amount, the only way left for the bank is to confiscate his house and the property. At the channel, the news person asks, did you inform Vishwan about it? The bankman says, definitely. They had been sending it through registered notice, and he says that the bank had tried everything possible to not, confiscate. ചെയ്യാതിരിക്കാൻ ശ്രമിച്ചു. പക്ഷേ now there's no other way left. We gave it Vishwan enough and more time, but after all, he could repay only 7,000 rupees. And now the entire amount has gone up to something like 90,000 rupees. Yeah, so now the discussion goes back to Vishwan. Did you hear what the bank secretary said? Vishwan says, yes. He says, the bank secretary may be contemptuous. എന്നോട് വെറുപ്പായിരിക്കും. ഞാൻ ആകെ 7,000 rupees അടച്ചിട്ടുള്ളൂ. But even to repay that, do you know the amount of suffering that we have had to undergo? He talks about his wife Radha, who worked so hard, അവര് തയ്യൽ പണി ചെയ്തിട്ട്, she toiled and tailored to raise that money. തയ്യൽ ചെയ്ത് now her knees are all swollen and she had to go to the doctor to get medicines. Even to buy the medicines, they had to spend so much money. And he says, it's എൻ്റെ ഉള്ളിലുള്ള നന്മ കാരണമല്ല ഞാൻ ആ 7,000 എങ്കിലും എടുത്തിട്ട് the സെക്രട്ടറിയുടെ അടുത്ത് പോയത്. I had to go there and bow down before this man. Is there anything more humiliating than that? And all of this not for my own sake. ഇത് മറ്റൊരാളുടെ കാര്യത്തിന് വേണ്ടി ഞാൻ എല്ലാ അപമാനവും സഹിച്ചിട്ട് ഈ തുച്ഛമായ amount തിരിച്ചടയ്ക്കാൻ പോയി. And now the only thing that I have is the house and the plot of land. And then naturally the news presenter asked the secretary, it is clear that this man is not the one who took the money and he has done whatever he can. ഇങ്ങനെയുള്ളൊരു സാഹചര്യത്തിൽ can't the bank show some clemency, ഒരു mercy, ഒരു ദയ കാണിച്ചുകൂടെ? And like you can write off കാർഷിക കടങ്ങൾ എഴുതി തള്ളുന്ന മാതിരി, can't you write off this debt too? And the bankman, in a very callous attitude, says, if you begin to start writing off debts like this only on the basis of tears, ഒരാളുടെ കണ്ണീര് കണ്ട് നമ്മളിങ്ങനെ കടങ്ങൾ എഴുതി തള്ളുവാണെങ്കിൽ, then we will soon have to close down the bank and sit at home. We are not responsible for the upkeep of human life. The bank's job is financial transaction. Look at the way, the inhuman way, the cold-hearted way in which he says that. He is not moved by Vishwan's problem. For him, all that matters is money. If the debt is not repaid, we have only one other way, that is confiscate Vishwan's property. So now the TV person, the news presenter, turns his attention to the psychologist. Yeah, so Vishwan Kundur's life is hanging in a balance. Dr. Nandakumar, being a well-known psychologist and social activist, what do you say about it? Will Vishwan kill himself? ഇതാണ് അയാൾക്ക് ഈ സൈക്കോളജിസ്റ്റിനോട് ചോദിക്കാനുള്ള ചോദ്യം. And the psychologist, on his part, he has all kinds of meaningless things to say. ആദ്യം തന്നെ പറയാ, സൂയിസൈഡ് ചെയ്യുമോ എന്ന് അങ്ങോരോടാണ് ചോദിക്കുന്നത്. And he says, ചെയ്യാനും ചെയ്യാതിരിക്കാനും ഉള്ള സാഹചര്യമുണ്ട്. Like the weather report, it is likely to there is the possibility or no possibility of rain in the മഴ പെയ്യാനും പെയ്യാതിരിക്കാനും ഉള്ള സാഹചര്യമുണ്ടോ എന്ന് പറയുന്ന മാതിരി, he may or he may not. Anyway, And then he goes on to philosophize. We have to we leave to assume that a planned move relating to suicide has already started forming in Vishwan's mind, but life has a tendency to seduce and pull back someone who is contemplating death. അതായത് ഇദ്ദേഹം മരണക്കുറിപ്പ് എഴുതി വെച്ചിട്ടുണ്ടെങ്കിലും even if he is thinking about suicide, ജീവിതം എന്നത് വേറൊരു രീതിയിലാണ് പ്രവർത്തിക്കുന്നത്. ജീവിത ആസക്തി എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് that can make you pull you back to life. It can fill you with all kinds of desires. There is that great wish in every human being to continue to live. Even in the face of death that is tied up tight and secure, they don't turn indifferent. Good food, clothes, phone call, ഇതൊക്കെ മതി നമ്മൾക്ക് നമ്മളെ ജീവിതത്തിലേക്ക് തിരിച്ചു കൊണ്ടുവരാൻ. Man's wishes do not end even with death. And that is precisely what has happened in Vishwan's case. He has to commit suicide, but a fear that is greater than death is gnawing at his insides, growling. The temptation of life is terrible. അതായത് ജീവിത ആസക്തി എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ആ ഒരു കാര്യം വളരെ വലിയ രൂപത്തിൽ it's huge in Vishwan, and it drowns us in the unfathomed depths of wishes and desires. അത് നമ്മളുടെ ഉള്ളിൽ ഇങ്ങനെ ആഗ്രഹങ്ങളും ആവേശങ്ങളൊക്കെ കൊണ്ടുവരും. And like an earthen vessel, we would get drowned into its tenderness and caressed by the water plants, fall into a slumber unawares and turn into a dream. In a very senseless manner, here is the psychologist talking about that, that wish to live. And he is using a lot of figurative language and moving away from the real topic, which is Vishwan's suicide. He's talking about it in a very വളരെ ആലങ്കാരികമായിട്ട് figurative manner. It will leave us in the middle of some great forest. There are ancient trees എന്നൊക്കെ പറഞ്ഞ് meaningless ആയിട്ട്. And if surviving this, Vishwan could still continue as a debtor to the Vellore Bank or as the husband of Radha the tailor, he would kill himself. That is for sure. അപ്പം the news presenter, he knows that he is drifting. Topical നിന്ന് മാറുന്ന കാരണം he performs his duty. He says, come, let us come to the problem. നമ്മളെ വിഷയത്തിലേക്ക് തിരിച്ചു വരാം എന്ന് പറയുന്നു. So he says, yes, I'm coming back to that. And then he says, Vishwan has chosen the Independence Day to die and displayed the threat in huge letters. വീടിന് മുന്നിൽ വലിയ വെണ്ടയ്ക്ക അക്ഷരത്തിൽ എഴുതി വെച്ചിരിക്കുകയാണ് that he'll commit suicide on the 15th of August. But according to the psychologist, ഈ മനഃശാസ്ത്രജ്ഞന്റെ വായന എന്താണ്? He did all this not to die, but actually to stay away from dying. മരിക്കാതിരിക്കാൻ വേണ്ടിയാണ് ഇതൊക്കെ കാട്ടിക്കൂട്ടി വെച്ചിരിക്കുന്നത്. And he says he loves life like death. It is not for death. He wants to continue to live. Whatever it is, the problem is very serious. And the right to live is a fundamental right. If even that is denied, then it is the perversion of the social setup here that Vishwan marks. It's not a problem that should be confined to merely to the cooperative bank. ഇത് ഈ സമൂഹത്തിന്റെ ഒരു പ്രശ്നമാണ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ് he is again continuing to talk in a meaningless way. So what is your position regarding Vishwan? Should he die or not? And the doctor says, that is not for me to find an answer to that question. Anyway, there's another reality. For an issue to be publicly discussed in society, you require a martyr. ഒരു കാര്യം ചർച്ച ചെയ്യണമെങ്കിൽ ഒരു martyr, ഒരു somebody, ഒരു ബലിയാടിനെ ഒരു സമൂഹത്തിന് ആവശ്യമാണ്. And ഈ ഒരു വിഷയം ചർച്ച ചെയ്യാനായിട്ട് we have a martyr in ബലിയാടായിട്ട് നമ്മൾക്ക് വിശ്വൻ ഉണ്ട്. That is how he looks at it. So then the news presenter says, we'll continue the discussion, but right now we have the headlines. And headlines എന്താണ് വലിയ കാര്യങ്ങൾ പറയുന്നത്? India-US accord on increasing nuclear cooperation. Kerala Legislative Assembly passes the entertainment tax bill to levy tax on amusement parks. Shabarimala Nada will be closed tomorrow, and Australia all out for 195 in the first innings of the Ashes cricket test. ഒരു വിഷയത്തിനും മനുഷ്യന്റെ ജീവിതമായിട്ട് there is no direct connection at all. The how to make man's human life or life on earth better. ആ വിഷയം ഒന്നുമല്ല ഹെഡ്ലൈൻസിൽ you have a nuclear treaty, you have the entertainment tax, you have amusement parks, you have the Shabarimala Nada, you have the cricket match. ഇതൊക്കെയാണ് അവിടെ ചർച്ച. I mean, these are the important headlines. When you have this man struggling to repay the money and is contemplating suicide.